And yes, thank you, Mr. Announcer. And Jay, welcome to the show for this week.
Hey, Steve. Thanks. It's great to be here.
It's always great to have you, my friend. But just before we go into things, folks, I want to remind everybody one more time, I'm giving away those free tickets for the Great White and Slaughter concert. You just heard Jay from First News talking about it. The key word today is save, as in Save Your Love, one of Great White's greatest hits. So just text SAVE, S-A-V-E, to 501-403-5276, and we'll announce the winner of those tickets today between 5:45 and 6. And Jay, first of all, where do you want to begin? Do we want to go with the Soviet action in Little Rock this weekend, or you want to start with the tax cut that came out of Little Rock?
Yeah, let's start with the tax cut. I think that's that happened just recently. It's probably top of everybody's mind.
Yes.
We talk on this show a lot that at Opportunity Arkansas, we spend a lot of time saying that we need to get rid of our state income tax. It's a tax on work. And this was a win for taxpayers this week. Pretty clearly, it's going to deliver a tax cut to the majority of everybody in Arkansas that works and pays income taxes. Mm-hmm. I just really want to address a couple things that have kind of been frustrating in the media. We saw our friends on the left out there saying that, well, this is primarily going to benefit the wealthy. We're cutting the top income tax rate, or that this is going to hurt government services. We really need to invest in government services. I shouldn't be surprised because we hear this stuff every time, but people should just understand what, when we say we're cutting the top income tax rate in Arkansas, the top rate kicks in at people who make over $25,700 a year. So yes. The top rate is paid by the majority of every working person in this state. So this week was a tax cut and effectively a pay raise for the majority of working people in this state, and that's a win for taxpayers. Mm-hmm. The other piece that a lot of folks who testified against the bill,
I wanted to let you know something. Now, you have definitely got me where I start, is looking at the Arkansas revenue reports as well as the federal government's. But when I mentioned this, and then, of course, our liberal friends fretting over cutting the taxes because they think they can spend your money and my money better than as a government than we can. I said, folks, now I'm not going to probably speak to Jay before our get-together, our weekly get-together on Thursdays. But I said, I bet you $1 to donuts he'll bring this up. And
absolutely.
And we didn't talk, and you brought it up.
Yeah, you're right. And so it's really ironic that, we had legislators this week passing a tax cut, which is great for taxpayers, something we support. And then we had folks come up and testify against the bill from these liberal activist organizations, basically saying that this was going to hurt state government and we needed to invest this money in programs and services because of this problem or that problem. And, if we just put a little more money into a new government program, we could solve every problem in society. Well, first of all, to your point, we got a report this week that the state's now getting close to $500 million in surplus revenue this year. There is more than enough money to return to taxpayers. Yes. And second of all, it's just ludicrous to think that money belongs to state government. Every dollar state government has, it comes from taxpayers. And if there was a great response given. I have to give kudos to Representative David Ray from Maumelle, mm-hmm. who's on the House Revenue and Tax Committee. And he made a really strong statement after this debate where he said, I reject the notion that state government has to solve every single problem in society before we can ever give relief to the taxpayers, because we would never put the taxpayers first. And that's exactly the problem, is that we need to put taxpayers first. So we were glad to see this tax cut. We hope it continues. We'd love to see the legislature make these automatic because the state is continuing to get more and more revenue. And when the state has a surplus, it should go back to the taxpayers. But this week, we're excited. We thank the lawmakers that worked on this, that got it done, Governor Sanders, who signed it into law. And it's important because we have to keep Arkansas competitive with our neighboring states.
Absolutely. And I would like to see, and I know there are going to be several of the members of the audience that are probably going to shake their head with me on this, but I would like to see the state maybe devise a way to help the counties and cities and school districts cut some of the property taxes back too. We've had several of our listeners call in. Matter of fact, several of them called after you had talked about eliminating the state income tax completely and said, Steve, I'm from over here in Tennessee. I was in Chattanooga, and he told how, the property taxes on vehicles are through the roof. And sometimes because Chattanooga sits in two counties, I believe he said, that cops will stop you depending on, whether or not you have the right county tag showing you paid the taxes on the car. And that must be a hassle, with two different counties, two different tax rates for them to deal with. But and then people from Texas, the same thing, called in and said, I moved over here from Texas to get away from the high property taxes. So what's your thoughts on reducing
absolutely.
Property?
Yeah, I think, we're focused on income tax because that's state revenue. As you mentioned, the county and local are the ones that are levying these property taxes. I think you saw some legislation this year on that. I think you're going to see even more next year on finding ways to address that. But ultimately, we need to be lowering taxes across the board because right now government is taking too much from the people. I think that's where the focus should be, is returning it wherever we can.
And something, President Reagan and President Kennedy, I will cite, and then President Trump as the third. But President Kennedy initiated this back during World War II. And of course, you and I both know that wealthy people employ the best tax attorneys and the best accountants to minimize their taxes. And there was, I believe from World War II, a 90% tax rate on people making $1 million. And President Kennedy was the first president that really shepherded through a large tax decrease. And after his death, his tax increases actually fueled the economy and paid for Vietnam. Then, of course, Lyndon Johnson, with all the Great Society spending, caused that really terrible inflation period we went through in the 70s. And then Rudy Giuliani, the mayor of New York, he cut the hotel taxes. The hotel taxes were so darn ridiculous in New York City that most people would want to stay outside of New York City just to avoid that monstrous tax. So Giuliani convinced the city council to cut the tax back to a much more reasonable level. And you know what happened, Jay? So many more.
I can imagine that we got some growth.
Yes. So many more people started staying in New York City hotels because they lowered the tax. That, number one, New York City took in more revenue with the lower tax rate because more people were staying in the hotels and paying the tax. And number two, because there was this sudden surge in business, the hotels in New York started hiring more employees to take care of the guests. So it lowered the tax, made more revenue, and employed more people. And then President Trump, the same thing.
Absolutely. It's a great point, and I'm glad you brought it up because, we seem to acknowledge that we put excise taxes on cigarettes and alcohol, understanding that those are things that are wanting to be discouraged. At least that's the idea behind those laws. And yet we don't ever consider the fact that the income tax is literally taxing work. And if we want people to get back to work, and if we want people to enjoy the fruits of their labor, we should not be taxing work. Mm-hmm. And so we're excited to see progress here and optimistic that we're going to see continued progress because we need to put Arkansas on a clear path to staying competitive with our neighbors and reward hard work in the state.
Absolutely. All right, Jay, when we come back, we'll get into the this Marxist amendment that they're trying to ram through. But ladies and gentlemen, just before we go to traffic, I want to remind everybody today's keyword is SAVE, S-A-V-E, for the Great White and Slaughter tickets for the May 16th concert down at the new Saracen Event Center. So text in SAVE to the American Leak Detection text-in line, and you'll have a shot at winning those tickets. All right, we'll be back after the traffic with Jay Robertson. And welcome back, everyone, to the Steve Finnegan Show here on this very busy Thursday, May 7th. And if you're just joining us, welcome. I have as my guest, as usual, for Thursday, Jay Robertson, the Policy Director for Opportunity Arkansas. So, Jay, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Steve. Great to be here.
Yes. So if you missed it, ladies and gentlemen, we went over the tax cuts, which Jay and I are both strongly in favor of, because the state is taking in more money than it needs to meet its financial needs. So the taxpayers should, and rightfully so, get some of their money back. And I love that comment that you said from about State Representative David Ray. That state government just can't solve all the problems. It's not their job.
Absolutely. I mean, if we use that logic, we would never get money back to taxpayers because, the other side's always going to come up with an idea for a new government program, and it's time to put taxpayers first.
Absolutely, my friend. So the next thing is your partner at Opportunity Arkansas is Nick Horton, the founder and CEO. And Nick put a post out on Twitter/X. Sorry about that, y'all. And about these signs that were distributed. Now, I want to preface my remarks, Jay, and I'm sure I know you well enough to know that you're in agreement with me. But the teachers' unions, for some reason, seem to have attracted people with extraordinarily left-wing views, especially the teachers' union executives that are running these unions. But a lot of teachers don't fit that bill. You know, they're conservative and good teachers with Judeo-Christian values. Because I hear from them, Steve, don't lump me in with those Marxists. I'm a diehard patriot and I'm pro-life, and I just want to teach. And so I just wanted to say that. But why don't you tell the audience about those signs that they were handing out this Saturday last Saturday rather in Little Rock?
Yeah, so, we talked about last week, and listeners might remember that we wanted to let people understand the truth about this educational rights amendment that's being pushed right now. They're out gathering signatures for this amendment. And we talked about how, just like you mentioned, that how this is being described as, well, this supports public schools, and this helps kids who are in poverty, and it provides accountability, and it's supported by the Education Association. That's what a lot of voters are being told. We want to make sure people know the truth, because what this would actually do is put a bunch of massive new welfare programs in the state constitution, basically a blank check. It would end education freedom. It would tax religious liberty. And to your point, we mentioned that, they're using the Education Association, which is really the teachers union, which has ties to the national union, which is dominated by leftist ideology. And but a couple days later, we saw this evidence at the Capitol where they had a May Day rally, which, by the way, May Day, another holiday long celebrated by communists, handed out posters that are just dripping with communist imagery. Red background, raised fist, solidarity forever, we are workers, all aimed to help gin up support for this amendment. They were out gathering signatures for it. It's not a surprise. We talked about people should understand who's actually pushing this. I mean, they got a check from the National Teachers Union, which is out there protesting Trump every day. They're protesting ICE. They're trying to get ICE out of schools. That's who's behind this, and it's not a surprise that they're putting these massive welfare programs in the Constitution. These are the same things that Mom Donnie's pushing in New York. These are the exact same kind of programs that lead to the fraud that we saw in the Minnesota daycare scandal. And so we just want voters to understand when they're being asked to sign this petition for this amendment, this is who's behind it, and this is what it would actually do for Arkansas. Yeah,
and let's start off with the American Federation of Teachers President Randi Weingarten. She's not really an educator. She was into labor and has a law degree, and she was more interested in running teachers' unions than she is in actually teaching children. But every time you see her on television or speaking, she's jumping around and shaking her fist like a lunatic.
Yeah, and like you said, they really co-opted the good name of teachers because my mother was a public school teacher, retired a public school teacher. My sister's a public school teacher. I have multiple family members that are still public school teachers today. And like you said, the vast majority of teachers are good people that want to do the right thing. But these union folks are basically trying to co-opt the word education, basically, to say this is all about educational rights, to really push a political ideology that I believe is out of step with Arkansas's values. And we should recognize who's actually pushing it and what their goals are. Because like you said, a lot of the folks behind this, it's not so much about educating students. It's about protecting a system and imposing control over the system so that they can control what kids are being taught. They really don't like the idea of education freedom. They don't like the idea of kids in Arkansas being able to choose a faith-based education. This amendment would attack that, would try to end that. And we just think Arkansans need to understand what that would actually do.
Yeah, I really don't know at this point which teachers union is bigger, because Randi Weingarten, the lunatic, is the president of the American Federation of Teachers. And, of course, the other big teachers union is the National Education Association. I know they have about 2.8 million members, according to their website. Now, the head of their union is a woman by the name of Rebecca S. Pringle. And she is much more low-key. You don't see her jumping around and acting like a lunatic like Randy does. But that doesn't mean she's not doing things behind the scenes either.
Sure. Well, what we do know is they had their name printed on these posters that look like something out of Stalin's Soviet Union. I mean,
when I saw the fist up, when I saw the fist, and by the way, ladies and gentlemen, I shared on my Twitter/X account. You can find me at @Finman, my nickname from high school, FINMAN 72211, and see what Jay and I are talking. And of course, if you want to follow Jay, that would be at and then J, the letter, and then Robertson, his last name, ROBERTSONAR. And, of course, Jay and I follow each other as well as Nick. And I, of course, follow Opportunity Arkansas's social media stuff, too. So that's how you get a hold of us on the Twitter. But, Jay, any closing thoughts? Believe it or not, we're at the end of the segment already.
Yeah, I would just encourage folks to make sure you're following us. Like you said, search Opportunity Arkansas. We're going to have more to share about this. We'll have more to share with your audience, but we want to make sure people are equipped with the information so that they know the truth about what this would do. And appreciate you allowing us to share it with your audience today.
Okay, my friend. God bless you, and we'll look forward to next Thursday. Have a great week.
Thanks. Thank you, sir. You too.
All right. Back after the news, everyone.